Hello everybody, this is Connor at BoatsDon'tSink, here with another Shadowverse Evolve video. This time we're going to be doing a deck profile for the Royal Paladin Vanguard deck from CP03. This one not as anticipated as the Kagero one, but still Royal Paladin, main character clan, sort of a fan favorite. Though maybe not as much as like Shadow Paladin, but we'll get there. Royal Paladin, the other essentially main character clan from the original seasons of Vanguard. Unlike Kagero, this one is less on the like big sticky bodies and removal. It is more on being more of an aggro deck, using smaller bodies, sort of flooding the board with them, and just being aggressive with a little bit of tempo flavor. But not fantastic in the tempo suite. It really does want to just sort of get some bodies down, stick a few of them, start swinging with them. As always, this list is meant to just be a starting point for the deck. It is probably unoptimized. It's just sort of the cards that I think fit best with what the deck wants to do, though of course, play around with that, change some numbers, try out some of the other cards that the set has to offer to find something that you're happy with. Alright, so here is the list. As you can see, a pretty low curve. There does have a handful of 4-drops and tops out at 5. We are playing 9 triggers in this, which is actually more than I play in a lot of these Cardfight Vanguard decks. Just because the triggers do actually really help with the game plan of this deck. Obviously, crits and heals are always very impactful. Draws are going to help us in a few ways here, which I'll talk about once we get there. So we are playing 9 of the triggers. We're playing the starter deck, starting amulet, and really a lot of, maybe not a lot, a good handful of starter deck cards overall. So pretty easy to build deck here as well. Our Evo deck is probably the fewest drive points you will see in any of the Cardfight Vanguard decks. Since the starter deck gives us 2 evolve followers, we do end up with 8 total evolves, and then just the 2 drive points. As always, if you want to check out the deck log page for this deck yourself, you can use the code in the bottom right. That's going to be 4AZGC, or you can use the link in the description. This is a very follower-heavy deck. Since we are an aggro deck, follower-based, we have 39 followers and just the 1 starting amulet. The curve is quite low. 8 1-drops, 15 2-drops, 6 3-drops. That's going to put us at 29 3-drop and below, with 8 4-drops and 3 5-drops to round off our curve. So pretty low to the ground, pretty aggressive. Most of our 4-drops and up are sort of going to be our game enders. And especially Alfred Early is the 4-drop that we're going to want to be playing, ideally on like 4, 5, and 6, just to try to get the game over with. Jumping into the individual cards we have here. First up is Margle. This is the draw trigger for the clan. It's a 1-drop 2/2, so we have Goblin stat line, already pretty good in like an aggro deck here. And then we have a Fanfare, discard a Royal Paladin card to draw a card. So the way this card helps us, like, in sort of a multifaceted aspect, obviously Goblin stat line and aggro is good. Otherwise, since we are an aggressive deck, we're going to be playing down a lot of these cheap bodies throughout the game. We're going to run out of hand very quickly. Having draw triggers is going to help us sort of refill our hand and not run out of gas. In addition, being a trigger unit means that if we drive check it, it's going to go straight to our cemetery. And its Fanfare effect lets us discard a Royal Paladin card to the cemetery in order to draw. Both of these things will help out with some of our top-end cards, King of Knights Alfred and Swordsman of the Explosive Flames Palamedes. These are both cards that gain additional sort of bonus effects for us having 15 or more Royal Paladin cards in our cemetery. Margle is going to be a pretty good way to help us accelerate to that. And 15 is a lot, so this isn't going to be a major part of our game plan. But if we can get to 15, these cards both become significantly more powerful. Next up, we have 2 copies of Miru Biru. So this is the 1-cost 1/1. Instead of discarding to draw, this is instead just reveal a Royal Paladin card from your hand to draw a card. This is just another body that we can get on the board. It doesn't swing for a lot on its own, but we have enough pump effects that we can make it a reasonable body if we need to swing with it. And it's just card advantage by getting us a body on board and replacing itself in hand by revealing anything that we have in our hand. Our last 1-drop is another Goblin stat line, 1 cost 2/2 Wingle. The only effect on this one is an activated ability. You can pay 3 and engage to select a Blaster Blade in your cemetery and summon it. So Blaster Blade is our 3 cost 3/3. He's the cover card pretty much of the original starter deck in Cardfight Vanguard. So this guy is actually kind of cool interaction. So Goblin stat line, good early. Paying 3 and engaging, you do make him an attack target, but you can't attack with him the turn you play him anyway, so you're not really losing out on much. And he doesn't sack himself, which you would expect from a lot of effects like this. You're literally just paying 3 to play the Blaster Blade from your cemetery, really. And Blaster Blade has a cool fanfare effect, where if he's put onto the field by an ability, he evolves. So it actually has great synergy there, where it's going to automatically evolve your Blaster Blade, which is going to trigger his on-evolve removal effect, and give you a 4/4 rush body to be able to swing with immediately. So really cool card that it's a great turn 1 play, and it scales really well from like turn 4 onwards. Moving into our 2-drops, first up we have Future Knight Liu. This is our critical trigger, so we'd be playing it anyway, because it has a critical trigger. But 2 cost 2/3. 2/3 stat line is really good this format. It's pretty hard to remove. Nothing really deals 3 damage for an efficient play point cost. Going first, 2-drop 2/3s can be just insanely difficult to remove. You'll probably untap with them and get to swing with them, which is fantastic in an aggressive deck like this. He also has a fanfare. Discard a Vanguard card. Search your deck for a Blaster Blade, reveal it, add it to your hand, then shuffle. So he is going to get you Blaster Blade straight to hand. Obviously not going to trigger the fanfare, but it does sort of set you up with your 3+1 Evo to play on either turn 3 or turn 4, just depending on whether you're going first or second. So pretty good just to thin your deck, get you there, and as with Margle, puts an additional card into your cemetery to help you get to those late game 15+ effects. Next up, we have Knight of Rose Morgana. This is the sort of Tamamo Cross clone for Royal Paladin, 2 cost 2/2. So pay 1 to ride, give it drive, which is going to be a drive point from our Evo deck. We only play the 2 drive points because this is the only follower in our deck that can actually ride. On drive, you select an enemy follower, deal it 2 damage, give this +1/+1. So it essentially evolves into a 3/3 that gets to deal 2 damage to an enemy follower on evolve. The strike effect, you don't have to drive for. So just whenever she swings, you can discard a Royal Paladin to give this +1/+1. Trading 1 card in your hand for 1/1 of stats is fine. Because we're an aggro deck and we're going to be a little light on hand the entire time, I don't think it's particularly great to just be jamming this. But if you have cards that you want in your cemetery, like a Blaster Blade to get back off of a Wingle the next turn, or maybe you're on a later turn in the game where discarding that 1 allows you to then play a Palamedes at 15 condition or something like that, it may make sense. Or, if you play this on turn 2 and it lives, and then turn 3 you go to swing with it, you can crack the amulet to make it a 3/3, discard to make it a 4/4. You just get a lot of stats onto it for pretty cheap. Could also be a good way to stick a body an additional turn. Really, the 2 damage here is the primary thing we're using this for. It's going to answer 3/2s. It's going to answer goblins. Just really good card to have early. Unfortunately, as I mentioned, the 2/3 stat line and 3/3 stat line are quite hard to answer this format, and she doesn't really solve that problem, but not much outside of the perfect guards. The snipe clones really do, and those are just horribly inefficient in decks like this, unfortunately. Our next 2-drop is Lake Maiden Lien. So this is a 2-cost 2/3, again, of course, with Ward, which is going to be a pretty good keyword just to have on a card you can jam. Obviously, you don't want to ward these unnecessarily early. You'd rather be swinging with them first. But after you swing with them, you get to block a hit. It's pretty nice, or just eat a removal effect. And Fanfare, you can discard a Royal Paladin card. And while it discards, but it's not actually going to help you with your cemetery requirement, because the effect here is to select a Royal Paladin follower in your cemetery and add it back to your hand. So you can essentially trade any Royal Paladin in your hand for any Royal Paladin in your cemetery. That's why we only play 2 copies of this. It's actually much better in the mid to late game as a way to recur some of our important sort of finisher plays. None of the finishers in this deck really like 1-shot or 2-shot your opponent. You're going to be needing to stick multiple of them probably to actually close out a game. So Leon can get one back after you've already played it and it's died, allowing you to play it again and keep pressuring your opponent. Our next 2-drop is Toy Poogle. This is a 2-cost 3/2, so a little more on the aggressive side. Fanfare, select a Vanguard follower that costs 4 or more on your field. Give it +2/+2 rush and assail. So out of the cards we have that cost 4 or more, most of them aren't particularly going to benefit from the rush or assail really, though it is pretty sick on Palamedes to turn him into a like 7/5 kill anything on the board. Problem is, most of these followers are so expensive on their own that like playing Toy Poogle in the same turn is not really gonna happen that often, and when it is, it's not on turns that you're trading them. You're like 4-drop into something on your opponent's field usually. But what this card is here for is to buff your guys that are going face. So in particular, Alfred Early and Palamedes, if they have Storm. Alfred Early always has Palamedes. I'm sorry, what? I'm having a stroke. Alfred Early always has Storm. Palamedes gets it at 15+. So Toy Poogle can buff them, buffing Alfred Early to a 5/5, or if he evolved, to a 6/6 Storm, get in for a bunch of extra damage. And then Palamedes, of course, is a 6/4 if he has Storm, so you can buff him to an 8/6, which is kind of just absolutely insane, and one of the ways that you can just sort of immediately end the game if you do get to that 15+ cemetery threshold. He can, of course, be used to buff Gancelot. Gancelot already has Rush and Assail, so those don't matter, but it does let you trade into slightly bigger things. Akane is actually an interesting case. Akane is Fanfare top 5, summon 2, cost 2 or lowers. So she can actually hit Toy Poogle herself for free, which buffs her to a 5/5. And if she evolves into a 5/5, so that'll be a 7/7. Which, while it doesn't have Storm, it can be just a sticky body that your opponent may not be able to full clear the board that it makes, and you'll get some damage in off of that. The last 2-drop follower we have is Yggdrasil Maiden Elaine. So this is a 2-cost 2/3. Again, with the defensive stat line, kind of awkward for an aggro deck, but them being able to stick and get in. This is actually something that I noticed very early on, like set 1, set 2 meta. The 2/3s going first were oftentimes better than 3/2s because they were hard to remove. So a 3/2 often represented 0 damage, whereas a 2/3 represented 2 damage. And that's kind of the case again here, where these 2/3s are difficult to remove if you can stick them going first. And then Fanfare just heals you too, and she has Ward. She's basically Demonium that just never gets the Bane, which is a really good card on its own. So definitely something we play 3 of, and it's a heal trigger on top of that as a bonus. Our starting amulet for the deck is Stardust Trumpeter, a 2-cost. Obviously, that 2 is never going to matter. You start with this in play. Activate ability is just Engage and Bury to give a Vanguard follower on your field +1/+1. This is the same effect as Lizard Runner Undo. Both of these cards are banned in Japan, and for good reason. The +1/+1 is just insanely problematic. Being able to do things like buff your turn 1 play into a 3/3 to swing for 3 on turn 2, or buff your random like 2/3 ward that you play into a 3/4, which is nigh impossible to remove on curve and represents fairly good damage. Or even if you hold on to it until later in the game, using it to buff a storm follower to just get in for extra damage at that point and maybe make it harder for your opponent to get rid of. Also a great option. So all around really good. It puts itself into its cemetery for free, which can help your 15 condition. Though I believe the other option is sack to like draw ditch or whatever, which technically helps it more. But the +1/+1 is just so powerful here, especially in terms of making your bodies a lot harder to remove. Moving into our 3-drops, we have a Blaster Blade. 3 cost, 3/3, single drive, and then you can pay 1 to evolve it, or Fanfare, if it was put onto the field by an ability, you can evolve it. The abilities you have that'll do that are Wingle, that we looked at, and the King of Knights Alfred Evolve, which we'll look at soon, can summon this from deck on Evolve, which will, of course, trigger Blaster Blade's Fanfare to evolve. The evolved form is a 4/4, also with single drive. On Evolve, select an enemy follower on the field and deal it damage equal to 2 times the number of Royal Paladin followers on your field. Unfortunately, this makes Blaster Blade kind of cheeks as a like actual 3+1 play, since he's just going to be 3+1 evolve into a 4/4, deal 2 to something, unless you stuck bodies earlier. But it does mean that he can scale up quite nicely. If you ever have turns where you like Wingle into him, that is going to, obviously you have the Wingle and the Blaster Blade, so you're shooting something for 4. Alfred summons him, he shoots something for 4. If you have bodies that stuck from earlier, he can shoot for 4 or 6 or whatever. So it scales up very nicely, but in the situation where a lot of other equivalent cards would deal 3, he's unfortunately only going to be able to deal 2. He's kind of like Draconeer in that regard. Though I guess he's probably better than Draconeer across a like large sample size. Our only other 3-cost follower is Knight of Friendship K. This is a 3-cost 4/3 rush, which is a pretty aggressive stat line, and it gets even more aggressive when you read the other line of text on this card. When playing this card, you can turn a face-up evolved follower with Blaster in its name face down. This card costs 3 less to play, so if you've already evolved a Blaster Blade, you can turn that back face down in your Evo deck to get a 0-cost 4/3 rush. Which can make some of your turns where you just like flood the board, and especially like Soul Saver Dragon turns where you +2/+2 your board. Being able to just jam this for free and then also have other guys, you can make really big boards for fairly cheap. That the ideal scenario is you stick enough bodies to be able to turn sideways into your opponent, while also dropping storm bodies on the next turn to finish them off. Looking at our 4-drops, first up we have Alfred Early from the starter deck. 4-cost 3/3 Storm Twin Drive. Pretty reasonable on its own. That's basically Maelstrom. Maelstrom's a 3-drop though, so this is, I guess, technically slightly worse than Maelstrom. It evolves for 2 into King of Knights Alfred. So this is a 4/4 Storm Twin Drive. And on Evolve, you search your deck for a Royal Paladin that costs 3 or less, summon it, then shuffle. If there are at least 15 Royal Paladin cards in your cemetery, give it and this follower +1/+1, which makes this a 5/5 Storm if you have 15 or more. Not an insane buff, but reasonable nonetheless. You can use this to either summon Toy Poogle or Blaster Blade. Obviously, Blaster Blade, if you get him, you're going to evolve him. He can act as double removal for 4 damage apiece, which can clear wards. That way your King of Knights can just get straight to face. Or, if there's nothing blocking the way, you can summon Toy Poogle and turn Alfred into a 6/6 with Storm, which can just get even more damage into your opponent's face. This is also a pretty sick time to crack the Amulet if you didn't earlier. Make him a 7/7. He just gets very difficult to remove. Very sticky body. This is also like one of the scenarios where playing stand triggers in this deck could actually be good. Because if you twin drive into a stand trigger, your untapped 7/7 is just like unanswerable probably. Unless you're, I guess if your opponent's playing Kagero, they can just Vortex Dragon it or Dote it or whatever. But a lot of decks are going to struggle answering an untapped 7/7. We don't play stand triggers in this deck. I don't think they're good to play from hand. unlike all the other options. So we don't want to rely on just drive checking them. But yeah, Alfred is a storm body that, like, your ideal curves, you're playing this guy multiple times in a game, starting on turn 4 just as a 3/3 body. Assuming you have the freedom to do so. Obviously, some matchups that's going to be a lot harder than others. And that is one of the issues with this deck, is in some matchups it can be hard to find time to actually pressure your opponent. But yeah, Alfred's pretty good. Our next 4-drop is Solitary Knight Gancelot. 4-drop 4/4 Rush Assail Twin Drive, keyword soup. Fanfare, if there's a Blaster Blade in your cemetery, draw 2 cards, then discard a card. For the rest of the turn, this follower does not take damage. This is great. Draw 2, discard 1 is card advantage. It lets you filter for the good cards that you want to play on the subsequent turns. And it fills your cemetery for your 15+ conditions. Not taking damage means you can Rush Assail into your opponent's follower to remove it and keep your Gancelot around, which is great. He has Twin Drive, so he can find triggers, which is great. Yeah, this card's just fantastic all around. We don't play 3 because he's not, like, particularly aggressive on his own. He's not really something you want to play multiple times in a game. He's just sort of there for that one kind of mid-game refuel, pop a dude. Playing him, like, on curve right after a Blaster Blade is pretty great time to do that. Then if he sticks, he sticks. If he doesn't, you can go into other cards. Other cards being Swordsman of the Explosive Flames, Palamedes, the card that barely has its name fitting on the card. This is a 4-cost 5/3, which is a really aggressive stat line. 5 attack on a 4-drop means your opponent basically has to remove it or they're taking way too much damage on the next turn. So this guy is like removal magnet. 3 defense at 4-drop, not the hardest to remove, but at least it's not 2, so your opponent does have to work for it a little bit. Fanfare, select an enemy follower on the field, deal it 5 damage. He basically kills anything when he comes down, like any single target, which is really good. It's the only reason this guy's a 3 of. If he didn't deal 5 and like be able to kill anything, I think he's too slow to be a 3 of. But as it stands, you can play him as a threat that your opponent has to answer, that also answers their guy. And if you do make it into the late game, if you have 15 Royal Paladins in Cemetery, he gains Storm and Strike, give this +1/+1, meaning he will be at least a 6/4 with Storm. 6/4 with Storm for 4 play points is something any deck wishes it could have. That kills people, so yeah. And the last card we have, our sort of quote-unquote top end. This isn't necessarily like the finisher play, but it is a card that can build a board, which, assuming that board lives to some degree, can transition into a finisher turn, like on the next turn or the turn after. So 5 cost 3/3, not fantastic stats for the cost. Fanfare, look at top 5 of your deck. From among them, you may summon up to 2 Royal Paladin followers that cost 2 or less and give them Rush. Put the rest on the bottom of your deck in any order. Obviously, there's a lot of cost 2 or less in the deck. Ones you're looking to hit really are like your 2/3 wards, Lian to grab back an Alfred or something, Elaine just to heal and be a bit more defensive, or Toy Poogle to make Akane a 5/5, as I mentioned, which can make her a bit harder to remove and make her the body that sticks to go face on the next turn. The other card that you can play, that we don't have in this list but is an option, that Akane can hit, is Knight of Loyalty Bedivere. This is a 2-cost 3/2 ward. Kind of weird stat line for a ward. But if you have a Blaster on your field, any follower with Blaster in its name, in this deck the only option would be Blaster Blade, but he is meant for the Majesty Lord Blaster deck, where you will be playing Majesty Lord Blaster and may also be playing like Blaster Javelin, Blaster Dark, maybe even Phantom Blaster Dragon. In that case, he becomes a 4/2 ward Storm, which can be a cool thing to hit off of Akane if you are able to make him a 4/2 ward Storm. Problem is, Akane can't hit any other cards with Blaster in their name, so you would have to already have it on field, and many of the options that would allow you to really like utilize Bedivere cost so many play points that they're not like particularly great plays alongside him. They start to get really clunky really quick. Blaster Blade is the cheapest. Essentially, you probably have to spend like 6 play points to evolve the Blaster Blade, like get the removal, all that. Or 6 to do like Wingull into Bedivere and get the Blaster Blade out. So it is an option. You could do it. And he's a potential like ward hit off of Akane. Something to mess around with, maybe. Other than that, Akane does evolve for 2 play points into Soul Saver Dragon. Soul Saver is a 5/5, so pretty big stat bump. It has Twin Drive, and on evolve, you select up to 2 other Royal Paladin followers on your field and give them +2/+2. The time to evolve this is really like after you've stuck a board the turn before and you're pumping a lot of stuff that can swing face. If you do play Akane and have enough play points to evolve her, you can buff the things she summons and just hope they live another turn to go face. Can also be a pretty reasonable option. Turning Toy Poogle into a 5/4, while the Toy Poogle itself makes the Soul Saver a 7/7, can be a pretty reasonable use of play points. But again, that's 7 total to play Akane and evolve her, so 6 + 1 going second. It may just be too late for things like that to sway the outcome of the game significantly, unfortunately. So looking at the deck as a whole, the pros of the deck are that you do have a good aggressive curve with good stat lines. They aren't 3 attack stat lines at 2 mostly, but 2 3s are good in this format. They're not what you think of when you think of aggressive, but being able to live and turn sideways is aggression. So it has good early drops and a good early game. And it has the ability to recur its important cards using things like Leon or Wingull, or just summon out cards that like help you build boards easily, you know, using things like Alfred Early, Kay, Akane. So it has good board presence. Unfortunately, a lot of it is just not fast. The only storm we have is Alfred Early, outside of the late game Palamedes. So it's really playing a like slow, sticky aggro kind of thing. Cons of the deck are the removal effects in general are pretty weak. Palamedes does shoot for 5, but that's single target removal on a 4-drop. Gancelot is single target removal on a 4-drop. Blaster Blade really needs a pre-existing board for his removal to be good, and Morgana only shoots for 2, which is normal for her like slot in the deck, but not having other things to sort of bolster that can make the removal a bit weak, making it not really a great tempo deck. It really just has to play more on that aggro line. It can't play like you think tempo, you think like the forest decks from set 4 and 5, or like the early Uma Musume deck, or even Idolmaster Cinderella Girls was like a fairly solid like tempo built into its aggro. Other cons, your powerful multi-card plays just cost too much. Things like I mentioned with Akane and Bedivere, or playing, you know, Alfred Early into summoning Toy Poogle is still 6 play points. And just playing multiple things in the same turn to build good boards, like playing other cards alongside Akane to evolve and buff them, just costs a lot. And 15 cards can be difficult to get into Cemetery, making your actual explosive card, Palamedes, and the evolved Alfred, maybe not even come up a lot of games. You really have to work to get that 15 cards. So a lot of downsides to the deck, unfortunately, but the way I'm describing it, it probably makes the deck not seem very good. I obviously don't think it's on the lines of like Kagero or whatever, but I do think these cards will stick on board more often than you expect and just be able to swing in. You know, you play your 2-drop, it lives. Next turn it gets to attack and you're playing another guy. So now your opponent, they couldn't answer your 2-drop, but now they have to answer it and something else. And it just sort of snowballs into you getting good board presence. I think that does actually make it a better deck than I'm maybe describing it as. Here's the deck as a whole again, and like I said, this may not be the most optimal version of the deck. Maybe playing cards like Bedivere is the way to go. Maybe playing stand triggers to keep your guys a little safer from removal is the way to go. Definitely some stuff to mess around with, try it out yourself. Royal Paladin having a starter deck does give it a lot more options than most of the other clans. And of course, here is the Evo deck. Again, very few drive points because we are mostly playing actual evolves, which is fine. It just makes powers converged like kind of not an option here. And as usual, if you want to check out the deck log page for yourself, 4AZGC is the code, or you can use the link in the description. Thanks for watching. I know these have been coming out a little slow as of the pace, but we'll hopefully pick that up before set 11 comes out. Royal Paladin is kind of cool. Not one of my favorites from the set, but the next one we'll be looking at is one I've actually been having a lot of fun with. The next probably two we'll look at are some I've played and had a lot of fun with. So yeah, until then, there should be some videos on the screen to check out. Thanks for watching, and we will see you next time.